Islamabad standoff. Pakistan proposes second round of US-Iran talks. The diplomatic marathon in Islamabad has entered a critical new phase as Pakistan formally proposed a second round of direct negotiations between the United States and Iran. Following the departure of US Vice President J.D. Vance earlier this week, the initial marathon session, the first of its kind in over 4 decades, concluded without a formal treaty, leaving the international community in a state of high anxiety. However, Pakistani mediators, led by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, are working tirelessly to bring both delegations back to the table before the April 21st ceasefire deadline. Sources within the Pakistani Foreign Office indicate that while a fragile understanding exists to prevent immediate military escalation, the fundamental disagreements regarding the Strait of Hormuz and long-term nuclear guarantees remain the primary roadblocks. The proposed second round aims to bridge these gaps by introducing a phased assets for de-escalation roadmap. Global leaders have praised Pakistan's role as a neutral mediator, but the clock is ticking. If a deal is not reached within the next 7 days, the temporary truce that has kept the Middle East from a full-scale regional war could collapse entirely. The world now waits to see if Washington and Tehran will accept the invitation to return to the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, for what many describe as the last chance for peace. The International Energy Agency, IEA, has issued its most dire warning since the 2020 pandemic, stating that the global economy is facing a massive demand destruction event. In its latest April oil market report, the agency revealed that it has slashed 730,000 barrels per day from its 2026 demand forecast due to the ongoing US naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The report highlights that global oil supply plummeted by 10.1 million barrels per day in March alone, marking the largest disruption in recorded history. The IEA warned that as scarcity persists, the sharpest decline in demand will be felt in the Middle East and Asia-Pacific regions, with the ripple effects soon reaching Western markets. Currently, oil loadings through the strait have collapsed from 20 million barrels per day in February to just 3.8 million barrels today. While alternative pipelines are being utilized, they only compensate for a fraction of the lost volume. The agency's chief economist emphasized that resuming flows through the strait remains the single most important variable for easing the pressure on the global economy. Without a diplomatic breakthrough, the IEA predicts that the energy shock could trigger a systemic collapse in industrial production across multiple continents, leading to a period of stagflation that could last for years. In a blistering critique of the United Kingdom's current defence posture, former NATO Secretary-General Lord George Robertson has accused Prime Minister Keir Starmer of corrosive complacency. Speaking in Salisbury, Robertson warned that the UK is currently underprepared, underinsured, and under attack. The former Labour Defence Secretary argued that the government is prioritising an ever-expanding welfare budget over the necessary investment required to secure the nation's defence capabilities during a time of global conflict. Robertson, who authored the Strategic Defence Review last year, expressed deep frustration over the delay in publishing the government's defence investment plan, which was supposed to allocate funding for modernised military hardware and personnel. He characterised the Treasury's reluctance to release these funds as vandalism, suggesting that non-military experts are gambling with national security. The Prime Minister's office countered by stating that the government is committed to spending 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2027, eventually reaching 3.5% by 2035. However, the opposition and military immediate breakthrough was expected. The mere fact that the two nations, who have no formal diplomatic relations, met face-to-face marks a significant shift in regional dynamics. Lebanon is seeking an immediate cessation of hostilities to address the humanitarian crisis caused by Israeli strikes, which have reportedly killed over 2,100 people. Conversely, Israel is demanding a tangible plan for the disarmament of Hezbollah and a buffer zone in southern Lebanon to protect its northern citizens. The talks are fraught with tension, as Hezbollah has publicly condemned the meeting and called on the Lebanese government to cancel the negotiations. Despite the domestic pressure in Beirut, the diplomatic channel remains open, providing a glimmer of hope that a localized ceasefire could be achieved, even as the broader US-Iran conflict continues to simmer. A US-sanctioned Chinese-linked tanker, the Rich Starry, has successfully navigated out of the Strait of Hormuz, apparently challenging President Trump's naval blockade. The vessel, which is listed on the US Treasury's specially designated nationals list for previous involvement in shipping Iranian products, was tracked using AIS data, turning back after an initial attempt to exit on Monday. However, overnight, the tanker restarted its voyage and exited the narrow waterway unchallenged by US naval forces. The tanker's destination field in its AIS signal notably read China owners and crew, a clear sign of defiance against the interdiction orders. This incident has raised serious questions about the enforcement of the blockade and the potential for a direct maritime confrontation between the US and China. Lloyd's List intelligence analysts confirmed the movement, noting that the vessel is laden, though its cargo remains unconfirmed. This successful transit by a sanctioned ship suggests that some operators are willing to test the red lines of the US military presence in the Gulf. The White House has yet to issue a formal statement on the Rich Starry, but military analysts suggest that this act of defiance could lead to stricter rules of engagement for the US 7th Fleet in the coming days. Following a monumental election victory that ended Viktor Orban's 16-year rule, Hungary's Prime Minister-elect Peter Magyar has announced a radical shift in the country's foreign policy. In his first major press conference, Magyar stated that if Russian President Vladimir Putin were to call him, he would tell him to end the killing in Ukraine. Magyar has pledged to immediately repair Hungary's fractured relations with the European Union and NATO, both of which were frequently undermined by Orban's pro-Kremlin stance. One of his first planned actions after taking office in May will be to lift Hungary's veto on a massive €90 billion loan for Ukraine, a move that has been hailed by leaders in Brussels, Paris, and Berlin. Magyar also criticised the previous administration's failure to diversify Hungary's energy mix, promising to build new infrastructure that reduces the country's reliance on Russian oil and gas. This political earthquake in Budapest is seen as a turning point for European unity, as the EU's most vocal internal critic has been replaced by a leader committed to Western integration. The shift is expected to speed up EU decision-making on defence and strategic autonomy, effectively removing the primary obstacle to collective European action against Russian aggression. Citadel CEO and billionaire investor Ken Griffin has issued a grave warning at the Semaphore World Economy Forum, stating that the global economy is at a very, very treacherous moment. Griffin emphasised that the continued closure or disruption of the Strait of Hormuz is the single greatest threat to global financial stability today. He projected that if the current naval standoff and energy blockade persist for more than 6 months, a worldwide recession is virtually inevitable. According to Griffin, the global economy is so deeply reliant on the unhindered flow of energy from the Persian Gulf that any prolonged disruption will trigger a cascade of industrial shutdowns and inflationary spikes. He noted that the energy tax, being placed on businesses through higher fuel costs, is already starting to dampen consumer spending and capital investment. Griffin called for urgent diplomatic intervention, suggesting that the current maximum pressure strategy must be balanced with a clear exit ramp to avoid a systemic economic meltdown. In a move that reflects growing European unease with the Middle Eastern conflict, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has announced the suspension of Italy's defence cooperation agreement with Israel. Speaking in Verona, Meloni revealed that her government decided to suspend the automatic renewal of the deal, which had been in place since 2016 and governed the exchange of military equipment and technological research. The Prime Minister stated that the decision was taken in consideration of the current situation in Lebanon and Iran, where the scale of military operations has sparked significant humanitarian concerns. Italy's decision is the most high-profile break in European military support for Israel since the start of the current hostilities. The move is expected to have practical implications for joint research projects and the supply of specialized components used in Israeli defense systems. While the Italian government maintains its support for Israel's right to security, the suspension of this agreement signals a demand for greater restraint and a push for a diplomatic resolution to the regional war. This diplomatic shift in Rome could lead other European nations to reconsider their own defense ties as domestic pressure for a ceasefire continues to mount across the continent. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has arrived in Beijing for high-level consultations with Chinese leadership regarding the US naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. China has officially condemned the blockade as a dangerous and irresponsible move that undermines international trade law and jeopardizes the fragile ceasefire currently in place. During a media briefing, the Chinese Foreign Ministry stated that Washington's ramped-up military deployment in the region will only aggravate confrontation and escalate tensions. Russia and China, both major energy partners of Iran, are reportedly discussing the creation of alternative shadow trade routes and joint maritime security measures to bypass the US presence. Lavrov is expected to meet with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi to exchange views on bilateral relations and coordinate a unified response at the United Nations Security Council. The meeting underscores the growing no-limits partnership between Moscow and Beijing as they seek to counter US influence in West Asia. Both nations have warned that they will hit back if the US implements further sanctions or tariffs on countries that continue to trade with Iran, setting the stage for a broader economic and maritime confrontation between the world's major powers. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, has issued an urgent alert, warning that the disruption of the Strait of Hormuz is triggering a global food catastrophe. The agency's chief economist, Maximo Torero, stated that the collapse of shipping traffic, down by over 95%, has paralyzed the trade of essential agricultural inputs, particularly fertilizers. The Gulf region accounts for nearly half of the world's sulfur trade, a key component in phosphate fertilizer production. As a result, fertilizer prices have already surged by nearly 30% in early March, with further increases expected as energy costs remain high. The FAO warned that if the disruption lasts for 3 months or longer, it will lead to a significant reduction in crop yields for staples like wheat, rice, and maize, particularly in fertilizer-dependent regions of sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Countries such as Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Egypt, and Sudan are considered most at risk of severe food insecurity. The agency called for immediate international coordination to protect food supply chains, warning that the rising costs of fuel and shipping insurance, which have spiked by as much as 10% of vessel value, will drive millions more into poverty and hunger if the maritime stalemate is not resolved. If you found this update valuable, please give this video a like and hit that notification bell so you never miss a breaking report. Subscribe for more up-to-date global news. My name is Vanessa for Clock Africa.
The long-standing tension between Pope Leo and President Donald Trump reached a boiling point. Speaking to journalists while traveling to Algeria, the Pope addressed recent attacks from the US administration, stating clearly that he has no fear of the American president. This follows a weekend of sharp rebukes from the Vatican regarding the US-led blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and the collapse of the Islamabad peace talks. The tussle intensified after President Trump took to Truth Social on Sunday night, labeling the Pope weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. Trump even suggested the Pope was only elected because he was an American who could handle him, adding, "If I wasn't in the White House, Leo wouldn't be in the Vatican." Adding to the social media firestorm, President Trump uploaded a controversial AI-generated image to Truth Social, depicting himself in a heroic messianic light, variously interpreted by followers as a doctor healing the world or a savior figure. Though the image sparked significant backlash from some conservative Christian groups for its blasphemous overtones, It went viral across global platforms. Despite the personal nature of the president's remarks, the Pope reaffirmed his mission, stating he does not wish to engage in a public dispute but will continue to condemn the violence of the ongoing Iran conflict, which he previously described as a delusion of omnipotence. The global energy market faced a massive shock today as Brent crude futures surged over 7%, officially trading above $101 per barrel, while West Texas Intermediate WTI climbed past $104 per barrel. The rally was triggered by President Donald Trump's executive order for a U.S. Navy blockade of the Strait of Hormuz following the breakdown of peace negotiation in Islamabad. The strait is a vital artery for global commerce, with approximately 20% of the world's oil supply passing through it daily. Analysts warned that if the blockade is enforced, the world could face an energy supply crunch not seen in decades, with gasoline and heating costs expected to rise significantly in coming weeks. U.S. Central Command has confirmed that naval assets are in position to begin a full blockade of all Iranian ports as of Monday afternoon. The objective is to apply maximum economic pressure on Tehran to return to the negotiating table after the failed weekend summit in Pakistan. In response, the Iranian government has characterized the move as maritime piracy and threatens to target any port in the Persian Gulf or Gulf of Oman that assists the U.S. military. This extraordinary showdown has raised the specter of a direct naval conflict, with the U.S. military warning commercial vessels that they may encounter a significant military presence in the region's shipping lanes. In what international observers are calling a political earthquake, Peter Magyar and Tisa's party have won a landslide victory in Hungary's national elections. Magyar secured a two-thirds super majority, decisively defeating longtime Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. The election saw a record turnout of nearly 80%, reflecting a public desire for change. In his victory speech, Magyar promised to restore Hungary's relationship with the European Union and distance the country from Russia's influence. Orbán conceded defeat late Sunday night, marking the end of his nearly two-decade-long grip of Hungarian politics and signaling a major shift in the balance of power within Central Europe. Despite the escalating war between the US and Iran, OPEC has released its latest monthly report, keeping global oil demand forecasts largely unchanged for the remainder of 2026. While the group acknowledged a 500,000 barrel per day downgrade for the second quarter due to regional instability, they expect this to be offset by a stronger rebound in the second half of the year. OPEC projects total world oil consumption to reach 106 million barrels per day. However, the report noted that global refining capacity has already been cut by over 5 million barrels per day due to supply constraints and damage to infrastructure, creating a volatile environment for fuel prices. The Argentine Chambers of Deputies have passed a landmark mining reform bill in a 137-111 vote, fundamentally changing environmental oversight in the Andes. The law transfers the authority to protect glaciers and periglacial waters from the federal government to individual provincial governments. Proponents of the bill argue it will unlock billions in foreign investment to copper, lithium, and silver mining. However, the move has faced fierce backlash from environmental groups who argue it endangers the country's freshwater reserves. The Milei administration maintains that the reform is essential for Argentina's economic modernization and global competitiveness in the green energy transition. Stock markets across the globe closed in red today as the reality of the Middle Eastern energy blockade set in. In Europe, the DAX fell 1.0% and the CAC 40 dropped 0.9%, while London's FTSE 100 managed to cap losses at 0.4% thanks to gains in the shares of energy giants BP and Shell. Investors are increasingly worried about the inflationary implications of the $100 plus oil, which could force central banks to maintain high interest rates. In Asia, Nikkei 225 and Hang Seng both posted losses near 1%. Market analysts suggest that the deadlock in diplomacy is currently the single greatest risk factor for global equities as the second quarter begins. The silence regime declared for the Orthodox Easter holiday has collapsed, with the Ukrainian General Staff reporting over 10,700 violations by Russian forces. Ukraine alleges that Russia used the ceasefire as a cover to strengthen position and launched thousands of kamikaze drone strikes on civilian settlements. Conversely, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed its troops strictly observed the truce and accused Ukraine of nearly 2,000 violations. The failure of the holiday pause has led to renewed heavy fighting, particularly on the Pokrovsk axis, dashing hopes that the religion's holiday could serve as a bridge to move to more permanent peace talks. President Miguel Diaz-Canel has issued a stern warning to the United States, stating that Cuba will defend its sovereignty at all costs. In a high-profile interview with NBC News, Diaz-Canel asserted that there is no justification for a U.S. military attack or any attempt to depose his government. This comment comes as Cuba faces a deepening energy crisis, which Havana blames on a US-led energy blockade that has paralyzed the island's transportation and healthcare systems. The president emphasized that while Cuba is open to dialogue, it will not accept conditions that demand changes to its political system, echoing a growing sentiment of defiance in the region. Prominent Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell has officially suspended his campaign for governor of California. His withdrawal comes following allegations of sexual misconduct reported by the San Francisco Chronicle and a rapid loss of support from high-ranking members of his own party. In an online post, Swalwell apologized for mistakes in judgment. In an online post, Swalwell apologized for mistakes in judgment. In an online post, Swalwell apologized for mistakes in judgment in his past, but maintained he would fight the false allegations through the legal channels. His exit creates a massive vacuum in Democratic Party field, where he had previously been a top-tier candidate. The race for the governor's mansion is now wide open as voters look forward towards the June primary. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon reported strong first quarter earnings today, but warned that the global economic landscape is being overshadowed by complex geopolitical risks. During the earnings call, Solomon noted that while the surge in mergers and acquisitions (M&A) remains strong, the conflict in the Middle East has caused a noticeable slowdown in initial public offering (IPO) activity. Interestingly, Solomon highlighted that for many CEOs, the opportunity to scale businesses through AI and technological change is currently overweighing some of these geopolitical fears. The bank remains hyper-aware of the enhanced capabilities of new AI models as it navigates a volatile 2026. Global stability hangs in balance today as historic peace talks in Islamabad reach a tense standoff. Welcome to Global News. My name is Lasisi Oluwasegun. Today, Vice President J.D. Vance departs Pakistan without a US-Iran breakthrough, leaving the Middle East on edge. Meanwhile, in London, Tyson Fury dominates his return to the ring and issues a brutal fight or retirement ultimatum to Anthony Joshua. From new presidential election in Iraq to a massive diplomatic rift between Israel and Spain, we are cutting through the noise and with the fact we bring you. These are your global updates. My name is Lasisi Oluwasegun. Let's get into the news. The high-stakes diplomatic marathon in Islamabad has concluded with a disappointing outcome for global stability. US Vice President J.D. Vance and Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf led their respective delegations through 21 hours of intense direct negotiations, the first of their kind in decades. Despite the heroic nature of the meeting, Vice President Vance confirmed upon his departure that Tehran refused to accept Washington's proposed terms for a permanent settlement. The primary sticking points were centered on Iran's demand for the immediate release of $6 billion in frozen assets and an end to Israeli military operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon. While a fragile temporary ceasefire remains technically in place, the failure to secure a formal treaty has left the international community on edge. US officials noted that the presence of Iranian-linked mines in the Strait of Hormuz remains a critical concern, security concerns that prevented a breakthrough. The talks were hosted by Pakistan, which acted as a mutual mediator, but the deep-seated mistrust between the two nations proved insurmountable during this specific session. Global markets are already reacting to the news as the hope for a swift resolution to the Middle East conflict dims. Tyson Fury has re-established his dominance in the heavyweight division with a masterclass performance against Aslanbek Makhedov at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. In his first professional bout in 16 months, the Gypsy King showcased his trademark agility and ring generalship, frustrating the hard-hitting Makhedov over 12 rounds. The judges' scorecards were a testament of Fury's control, reading 120 to 108, 120 to 108, and 119 to 109 in his favor. Throughout the fight, Fury utilized his superior reach and jab to keep Makhedov at bay, neutralizing the Russian's power. Makhedov, who entered the ring with a reputation for early knockouts, found himself unable to land any significant clean shots as Fury danced all around the ring, frequently touting his opponent. The victory brings Fury's professional record to 35 wins, 2 losses and 1 draw. The atmosphere in the stadium was electric, with a sellout crowd witnessing what many believe is the final chapter of Fury's illustrious career. These wins prove that despite his time away from the sport, Fury remains one of the most technically gifted heavyweights to ever grace the squared circle. Immediately following his victory over Makhedov, Tyson Fury dropped a bombshell on the boxing world by issuing a strict ultimatum regarding his future. Speaking at a post-fight conference, Fury declared that if his next opponent is not Anthony Joshua, he will officially retire from the sport of boxing. He stated quite colorfully that he has no interest in fighting up-and-coming contenders or chasing more world title belts. as his only remaining motivation is the battle of Britain against Joshua. Fury went as far as to say he would eat 1,000 Easter eggs and blow up to 35 stone in weight rather than face anyone else. This statement has put immense pressure on promoters and broadcasters to finally finalize a deal that has eluded the sport for years. While Fury's camp, led by Frank Warren, claims that a deal is 100% going to happen this year, the fighter's history of erratic retirement claims as fans cautious. However, the intensity of his specific call-out should suggest that the heavyweight landscape is now entirely dependent on whether AJ is willing to step into the ring for what would be the biggest fight in British boxing history. In the same vein, the drama at the Tottenham Stadium extended beyond the rope as Anthony Joshua, who was also seated ringside, chose not to enter the ring for a traditional face-off following Tyson Fury's victory. While Fury was screaming for the fight to be made into the microphone, Joshua remained composed in his seat, a move interpreted by many as a calculated psychological tactic. Later, in an exclusive interview with Netflix, Joshua explained his cautious approach, noting that while his heart wants the fight, the business side of boxing requires careful negotiations. He mentioned that he has sat at the negotiation table with Fury many times before, only for the talks to collapse. Joshua emphasized that he is ready to fight tomorrow if the terms are right, but he refused to participate in the theatrics of in-ring confrontation. This measured response has sparked a massive debate among fans and analysts whether Joshua is truly ready for the Gypsy King or if he's simply being wary of Fury's unpredictable nature. The ball is now firmly in Joshua's court to respond to Fury's ultimatum with a signed policy. In a move that promises to end months of political paralysis, the Iraqi parliament has officially elected Nizar Ahmedi as the new president of the republic. Ahmedi, the former environment minister and a prominent member of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan (PUK), secured 227 votes in a second-round runoff against his primary rival, Motana Amni. The session was attended by 250 lawmakers, comfortably exceeding the constitutional quorum required for such a high-stake vote. Following his victory, President-elect Ahmedi took the constitutional oath in Baghdad, promising to uphold the sovereignty and unity of Iraqi. Under the Iraqi constitution, Ahmedi now has 15 days to nominate a prime minister designate from the largest parliamentary bloc. This election is seen as a critical step toward forming a stable government in a country that has struggled with internal division and foreign interference. Ahmedi's experience as a former advisor to previous presidents and his background in environmental policy are expected to bring more technocrats and conciliatory approach to the presidency during this volatile period in the region. The United Kingdom has officially announced that the planned transfer of Chagos Island to Mauritius has been placed on an indefinite hold. This dramatic reversal follows the withdrawal of support from the United States under President Donald Trump's administration. The British government admitted that the legislation required to ratify the agreement has run out of time in Parliament and will not be included in the upcoming King's speech on May 13th. President Donald Trump has publicly criticized the deal, calling the transfer of sovereignty an act of great stupidity due to the strategic importance of the joint UK-US military base in Diego Garcia. While Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government initially pushed for the deal to resolve a long-standing colonial dispute, the loss of American backing made the move politically and logistically impossible. Mauritius has expressed this deep disappointment over the delay having fought for decades for the return of the islands. The situation remains a major point of tension between London and Washington, highlighting the influence of American foreign policy on British territorial decisions. Official results from Djibouti confirm that President Ismail Omar Guelleh has been re-elected for his sixth term in office, securing a staggering 97.81% of votes. Guelleh, who has ruled the strategically located Horn of Africa nation since 1999, faced minimal opposition in an election that international observers monitored closely. His victory ensures that the continuation of his long-standing policies, which are focused on leveraging Djibouti's unique geography as a hub for foreign military bases and international shipping. Despite the overwhelming margin of victory, some opposition groups have raised concern about the fairness of the electoral process and the lack of a robust democratic space. However, the official result stands, and Guelleh is set to lead the country for several more years. Djibouti remains a critical partner for global powers like the US, China, and France, all of whom maintains a military presence in the country to safeguard trade routes in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. A tragedy has struck northern Haiti, where at least 30 people were killed in a massive stampede at the historic La Fère Citadelle. The incident occurred during a crowded event at the early 19th century fortress, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a symbol of Haitian independence. Jean-Henri Petit, the head of civil protection for the North Department, confirmed the death toll but warned that the numbers of fatalities could rise as more information becomes available from local hospitals. The cause of the stampede is currently under investigation, but initial reports suggest that a sudden panic in a densely packed area led to the fatal crash. Emergency services struggled to reach the site due to the citadel's remote mountainous location. This disaster has cast a shadow over what was supposed to be a cultural celebration and has raised serious questions about crowd management and safety protocols in Haiti's national monuments. The government has declared a period of mourning for the victims. The world of tennis is buzzing as Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner have both secured their spot in the final